It began with a simple job listing: night shift caretaker at an abandoned morgue. The pay was suspiciously generous, but desperation makes you overlook red flags. They gave me a list of rules, strange and oddly specific. Rules I thought were a cruel joke until I realized they were the only thing keeping me alive. When I first saw the job listing, I thought it was a mistake. Night shift caretaker, abandoned morgue, generous pay, no experience required. It was posted on a sketchy job board, the kind you scroll through at 3 a.m. when your bills are overdue and you're willing to consider anything. I didn't know then that this would become the worst decision of my life. The application process was surprisingly simple. A brief call with a man who introduced himself as Mr. Hargrove, who barely asked about my experience. He only wanted to know one thing: do you have the courage to follow instructions, no matter how strange they seem? Desperation can make you brave. Or stupid. I told him yes. I arrived at the morgue on a rainy night, its silhouette looming against a backdrop of rolling thunderclouds. The building was an imposing, crumbling structure, its walls lined with ivy and its once white paint peeling away like rotting skin. The front door groaned as I pushed it open, the air inside thick with the stench of decay and dampness. Mr. Hargrove was waiting for me in the lobby, a tall, thin man with a gaunt face and piercing gray eyes. He handed me a set of keys and a small, tattered notebook. These are the rules. Read them carefully. Follow them without question. And whatever you do, never break them. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it that sent a chill down my spine. I waited until I was alone in the lobby before opening the notebook. The rules were handwritten in a shaky, almost frantic scrawl. 1. Lock the main doors by 8 p.m. Do not unlock them until 6 a.m., no matter who knocks or what you hear. 2. Every hour, make your rounds and check the cold storage doors. If any are open, close them immediately. Do not look inside. 3. At 12:30 a.m., place a white candle on the front desk and light it. Do not let it burn out. Replace it if needed. 4. If you hear whispers coming from the empty hallways, ignore them. They will try to get your attention. Do not respond. 5. Never, under any circumstances, go into the basement. 5 rules. Simple enough, I thought. Probably just some kind of hazing tradition for new employees. Still, a sense of unease settled over me as I read them, but I brushed it aside, telling myself I was being paranoid. The first night was mostly quiet. I locked the doors at 8 p.m. as instructed, and the building seemed to sigh as the last of the daylight faded. I made my rounds each hour, walking the narrow, dimly lit halls lined with cold storage units. Their steel doors were marked with yellowed, peeling labels, some names faded to illegibility. At 12:30 a.m., I placed a white candle on the front desk and lit it, watching the small flame flicker and dance. It seemed pointless, but I was too tired to question it. But then, just after 1 a.m., I heard it, a faint, almost melodic whisper echoing from the hallway behind me. It was soft at first, like a distant breeze, but soon grew louder, the words twisting and overlapping, as if a crowd was murmuring in an unfamiliar language. My heart pounded, but I remembered the 4th rule: ignore the whispers. Do not respond. I kept my eyes fixed on the flickering candle, refusing to turn around. The whispers continued for several agonizing minutes before fading away. When I finished my shift, Mr. Hargrove was waiting for me outside. He didn't ask how the night went, didn't offer any reassurances. He simply took the keys from me and nodded. Same time tomorrow, was all he said. The next night, I arrived with a growing sense of dread. The rain had returned, a constant downpour that seemed to drown the world outside. I locked the doors at 8 p.m. and began my rounds. This time, I noticed something strange. The cold storage door at the far end of the hallway was slightly ajar. My pulse quickened. Rule 2. If any doors are open, close them immediately. Do not look inside. I stepped forward, carefully gripping the handle. My fingers trembled. I shut it firmly, trying not to let my gaze linger on the darkness within. Back at the front desk, I tried to calm myself, the candle's warm glow providing a small comfort. But just after midnight, the whispers began again, louder this time, like they were coming from right behind me. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to ignore them. But then something changed. The whispers shifted, forming words I could almost understand. They whisper my name. I stared at the candle, struggling to breathe. Ignore them. Do not respond. The whispers continued, my name twisting and distorting, the voices growing desperate, angry. The air grew thick, oppressive, pressing against my chest. I squeezed my eyes shut, muttering to myself, "It's not real. It's not real." And then silence. The rest of the night was a blur of fear and exhaustion. When morning finally came, I stumbled out of the morgue, greeted by the gray light of dawn. Mr. Hargrove was waiting again, his expression unreadable. "I see you follow the rules. That's good," he murmured, almost approvingly. The next few nights followed the same pattern. Lock the doors, check the cold storage, light the candle, and endure the whispers. Each night, they seemed to grow louder, more desperate. They no longer just whispered my name. They pleaded, begged for help, accused me of terrible things I didn't understand. But last night, something changed. I was making my rounds when I saw it. A figure standing at the end of the hallway, shrouded in shadow. My heart nearly stopped. I blinked, and it was gone. I rushed back to the front desk, the candle's flame struggling against an unseen draft. Then, the power went out. Complete darkness swallowed the room, and the whispers became a cacophony, shrieking my name, clawing at my sanity. My hands fumbled for the lighter, my breath coming in panicked gasps. When I managed to relight the candle, the whispers abruptly ceased. But the darkness at the hallway's end remained, a swirling void watching me, waiting. Mr. Hargrove's words echoed in my mind. Follow the rules. Never break them. But I had a feeling that the rules weren't just meant to keep me safe. They were meant to keep something else in. And now, as I sit here, staring at the flickering candle, the whispers have begun again. But they're different now. They're laughing. They know I'm afraid. And I know this is only the beginning. The darkness didn't leave me, not even with the arrival of daylight. It clung to me like a damp shroud, whispering in the back of my mind, even as I walked home under the gray, rain-soaked sky. Sleep became a distant memory. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the shadow at the end of that hallway, felt the cold tendrils of fear clawing at my throat. But desperation is a cruel master. I needed the money, and quitting wasn't an option. So, once again, I found myself standing in front of the abandoned morgue, the wind howling through the broken eaves, the rain beating against the cracked windows. Mr. Hargrove was nowhere to be seen. He never was after that first night. I stepped inside, locking the door behind me with trembling fingers. The old, decaying lobby felt smaller, the shadows seemed thicker. I tried to focus on the rules, follow them, and you survive. But the notebook was beginning to feel like a curse, each line etched into my mind. The first hour was uneventful. I walked the hallways, checking the cold storage doors. They were all shut, their rusted handles glinting under the flickering overhead lights. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, a prickling sensation crawling along the back of my neck. At 12:30 a.m., I lit the candle on the front desk, watching the tiny flame dance in the stagnant air. The whispers began almost immediately, louder now, more desperate, their ghostly voices clawing at my sanity. I gripped the edges of the desk, knuckles white, trying to ignore them. But then I heard something else, a faint scraping sound like fingernails dragging against metal. My eyes darted toward the hallway, but nothing was there. Nothing I could see, at least. Panic clawed at me. I tried to breathe, to remind myself of the rules. But then, the lights above me began to flicker. Once, twice, then darkness. Only the soft glow of the candle remained, a fragile barrier against the oppressive shadows. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, swirling around me. But beneath them, I heard something else, a low, guttural growl, reverberating from somewhere deep within the building. My instincts screamed at me to run, but the rules, never leave until 6 a.m. I was trapped. My eyes darted to the hallway, and I saw it. The cold storage door at the far end was open again. But this time, something was emerging. A dark, shifting form, crawling out of the frigid darkness, dragging itself across the floor. The candle's flames sputtered, struggling against an unseen force. I grabbed the notebook, clutching it like a talisman, repeating the rules under my breath, a desperate mantra. But then the whispers stopped, replaced by a voice, clear, sharp, and mocking. They can't help you. You know that. The voice seemed to come from everywhere, reverberating through the empty halls. My heart hammered in my chest. Who are you? I screamed, my voice cracking. Silence. Then the sound of something wet and heavy dragging across the tiles. I turned to see the figure, now fully emerged from the cold storage, a twisted, shadowy form, its face a mass of darkness with glowing, hollow eyes. My legs refused to move, my body frozen in place. The candle's light grew weaker, the flame almost invisible. Follow the rules. They said follow the rules. The figure rasped, a mocking echo of Mr. Hargrove's voice. Desperation took over. I lunged for the lighter, the flame of the candle barely clinging to life. My hand shook so badly I almost dropped it, but then I managed to relight the candle, the flame roaring back to life. And just like that, the whispers ceased. The darkness receded, pulling away like a wounded beast. The figure writhed, its shadowy form twisting before vanishing into the cold storage, the door slamming shut behind it with a deafening crash. I stumbled back, my breath ragged, my vision blurring. I didn't move for what felt like hours, clutching the desk, staring at the candle, its warm light the only thing keeping the darkness at bay. When morning finally arrived, I staggered out of the morgue, the rain now a gentle drizzle. But this time, Mr. Hargrove was not waiting for me. Only an old, battered car parked by the curb, its driver's window down. A man I didn't recognize sat behind the wheel, his face hidden in shadow. Still alive, I see, he called out, his voice calm and almost amused. I stared at him, my heart still racing. Who are you? He chuckled, a low, rasping sound. Someone who's been where you are now. Someone who knows the truth. The truth about the morgue, about the rules. I demanded, taking a hesitant step closer. The rules aren't just for your safety. They are for its containment. His voice grew colder, but it's weakening, and when it breaks free, a cold wind swept through the street, sending a shiver down my spine. I didn't know what to say, but before I could ask anything else, the man's car roared to life, pulling away, disappearing into the mist. I barely made it home, collapsing onto my bed without even bothering to lock the door. My dreams were a swirling chaos of whispers and darkness, a constant, suffocating fear gnawing at my mind. When I awoke, the rain had returned, pounding against my window. I checked the time, 7 p.m. I was already running late. I considered not going back, just leaving the city, abandoning everything. But the debt, the unpaid bills, the desperate weight pressing down on me pulled me back. With a sense of dread that gnawed at my soul, I returned to the morgue. The building seemed even darker, its looming structure a twisted monument of decay. I stepped inside, the familiar stench of dampness and decay wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. I locked the door, my hands trembling. I pulled out the notebook, reading the rules again, as if somehow they would provide a sense of comfort. But instead, they seemed more like a taunt, a cruel reminder of the twisted game I was trapped in. As I stood in the lobby, trying to steady my breathing, I noticed something new, a sixth rule, written in the same frantic scrawl, but with fresh ink. 6. If you see yourself in the hallway mirror, don't look away. A cold chill settled over me, sinking into my bones. There was only one mirror in the entire building, a dusty, cracked piece of glass mounted on the hallway wall near the cold storage. I didn't want to check it. I didn't want to know what it meant. But as the clock struck 8 p.m., the whispers began again, louder than ever, their voices blending together, a chaotic chorus of suffering. And then, beneath the cacophony, I heard it, my own voice, calling out, pleading from somewhere in the darkness. Please help me. My blood ran cold, and tonight, I have a feeling the rules won't be enough to protect me. I arrived at the morgue soaked to the bone, the rain battering me with a relentless fury. The air was thick, oppressive, the darkness clinging to the building like a living thing. I unlocked the door, each creak of the rusty hinges feeling like a scream in the silence. As I stepped inside, the familiar stench of decay assaulted my senses, a mix of damp rot and something far worse, something ancient. My heart raced as I fumbled with the keys, locking the door behind me. The notebook felt heavy in my hand, the hastily added sixth rule burning in my mind. If you see yourself in the hallway mirror, don't look away. The hallway mirror was an old, cracked thing mounted just beyond the cold storage. I'd walked past it a dozen times, never paying it much attention. But now it loomed in my thoughts, an ominous presence I couldn't escape. I placed the candle on the front desk, my hands trembling as I lit it. The small flame cast flickering shadows across the room, barely pushing back the darkness. I told myself to focus on the routine, follow the rules, survive the night. But the words felt hollow now, a cruel mockery. The first hour was quiet, a tense silence hanging in the air like a coiled serpent. I made my rounds, checking the cold storage doors. They were all shut, their rusted handles cold against my touch. But the air was thick, suffocating, and I felt the weight of unseen eyes following me. At 12:30 a.m., I replaced the candle, the flame dancing wildly as if threatened by an invisible wind. The whispers began almost immediately, louder, their words a chaotic blend of pleas, accusations, and mocking laughter. I tried to block them out, clenching my fists until my nails bit into my palms. And then I heard it, a faint, rhythmic tapping coming from a hallway. A slow, deliberate sound, like fingernails tapping against glass. My blood ran cold. The mirror. Rule 6. If you see yourself in the hallway mirror, don't look away. But I hadn't even looked at it. The tapping continued, faster now, desperate. A part of me wanted to run, to barricade myself in the lobby and pray for dawn. But a twisted, morbid curiosity gnawed at me. What would happen if I looked? What did the rule mean? The whispers grew louder, the tapping more frantic, almost frantic scratching now. I took a deep breath, gripping the notebook like a lifeline, and forced myself to step into the hallway. It was dark, the weak, flickering light barely illuminating the cracked walls. The mirror hung at the far end, a dusty, warped piece of glass that seemed to shimmer in shadows. As I approached, the tapping stopped, replaced by a suffocating silence. And then I saw it. My reflection was there, but it wasn't me. It looked like me. Same face, same disheveled hair, same hollow, fearful eyes, but it didn't move in sync. It stood perfectly still, staring at me with an expression of cold malice. A wave of nausea washed over me, but I couldn't look away. I didn't dare. The rules echoed in my mind, each word a pounding drumbeat. Don't look away. The reflection's lips twisted into a smile, a cruel, knowing grin that didn't belong to me. It raised a hand, pressing its palm against the glass. And for a moment, I thought I felt a cold, wet sensation against my own palm. I've been waiting. It whispered, its voice distorted, layered with a chorus of other voices. Male, female, old, young, all speaking at once. Waiting for you to finally see me. My knees trembled. My voice was barely a whisper. What are you? It leaned closer, the glass warping, twisting around its face, its smile widening to an impossible, grotesque degree. I am the truth hidden behind the rules. I am what you become when you break them. I wanted to scream, but my throat felt sealed shut. My reflection's eyes darkened, the irises fading to an inky blackness. Its hand pressed harder against the glass, and then cracks began to spiderweb outward from its palm. Panic surged through me. I staggered back, nearly tripping over my own feet. But I couldn't look away. Not yet. The candle on the front desk sputtered, the darkness growing thicker, oppressive. I will take your place. The reflection hissed, pressing harder, the glass cracking louder, tiny shards splintering and falling to the floor. And then, with a deafening shatter, the mirror exploded. I raised my arms, shielding my face, glass raining around me. Silence followed, a suffocating, hollow void. But when I lowered my arms, the hallway was empty. The mirror was gone. Only the rusted frame remained, twisted and broken. My reflection was gone. I stumbled back to the lobby, gripping the desk to steady myself. The candle's flames struggled against the darkness, the whispers now a frenzied cacophony. My head pounded, and I barely heard the sound of a door slamming shut at the far end of the hallway. I checked the notebook again, but the rules were unchanged. No hint, no warning about the shattered mirror or what it meant. Only the same twisted instructions. I try to calm myself, breathing in slow, ragged gasps. But then the whispers changed. They became clear, their words piercing through the madness. Don't trust the rules. They lie. My blood turned to ice. The rules, my only guide, my only hope of survival, were a lie. A loud, rhythmic pounding echoed from the hallway. I looked up, my heart racing. The cold storage doors were shaking, the metal rattling against their frames. And then, one by one, they began to open. A chilling mist poured out, and shadowy figures began to emerge. Twisted, shambling shapes with hollow, empty faces. I stumbled backward, but the door to the outside wouldn't budge. Locked. I clawed at the handle, my fingers slipping, panic gripping me. The candle's flame flared, then went out. Darkness swallowed the room. A wet, ragged breath whispered against my ear. You can't escape. Blindly, I fumbled with the lighter, my hand shaking so badly I dropped it. Scrambling, I grasped for it on the cold, damp floor, but something brushed against my hand. Cold, clammy, skeletal fingers. I screamed, wrenching my hand away, and finally managed to strike the lighter. The tiny flame flared, barely illuminating the room. But the shadows were everywhere, watching, waiting. I grabbed the candle, desperately trying to relight it. The shadows twisted, drawing closer, their empty faces leering at me. Finally, the candle caught, the flame burning brightly, and the shadows recoiled, their forms twisting and writhing before vanishing into the darkness. But I was not alone. I looked up, and there it was, my reflection, standing in the darkness just beyond the candle's light, its empty black eyes fixed on me. I will take your place, it whispered, and this time, I believed it. Morning came slowly, the pale gray light barely breaking through the rain outside. But I didn't leave. I couldn't. The door was gone, replaced by a solid, cracked wall. The windows were sealed with rusted iron bars. Trapped. The whispers had grown silent, but the reflection remained, watching, waiting, a twisted smile on its face. And I realized the horrible truth. I hadn't just broken the rules. I had become part of them. I don't know how many nights have passed. The concept of time has become a cruel joke within these crumbling walls. Daylight no longer reaches the morgue. The windows remain barred, and the door that once led to freedom is now a solid, cracked wall. I am a prisoner in a place that defies all logic, a twisted labyrinth of darkness and despair. My reflection is always there, lurking in the shadows, its empty, soulless eyes fixed on me. Sometimes it whispers to me, a cruel, mocking echo of my own voice. Other times, it simply watches, a silent predator savoring my fear. The candle has become my only ally. Its weak, flickering flame is the last barrier between me and the abyss. But the wax is nearly gone, and I have no replacements. Each night, the darkness presses closer, thick and suffocating, and I can feel the chill of unseen hands brushing against my skin. I cling to the notebook, the cursed rules scrawled in desperate, frantic handwriting. They were meant to protect me, but now they feel like a twisted joke. The sixth rule, if you see yourself in the hallway mirror, don't look away, was meant to save me. But the mirror is gone, shattered, and yet my reflection remains. And the whispers, they have changed. They no longer plead or accuse. They laugh, a cacophony of mocking voices, whispering the same phrase over and over. You are part of it now. I've tried everything. Banging on the walls, screaming for help, even trying to claw through the rusted bars on the windows until my fingers bled. Nothing works. This place is alive, a breathing, rotting entity that has swallowed me whole. I keep making my rounds, a twisted habit I can't seem to break. The cold storage doors remain shut, but I can hear movement behind them, scratching, muffled whispers, and sometimes the soft, wet sound of something shifting. I don't dare open them. Last night, as I walked the hallway, I noticed something new. Another door, one I had never seen before, set deep in the shadows. The paint was peeling and the handle was rusted, but it seemed inviting, almost warm, a faint light seeping from beneath. I approached it, my heart racing. Could this be a way out? Was this some kind of escape? But as I reached for the handle, a voice echoed from the darkness, a cold, familiar whisper. Don't touch it. I spun around. My reflection stood in the darkness, its face twisted into a cruel smile. You won't like what you find, it mocked. My hand froze, inches from the handle, but desperation clawed at me. Was this really a way out, or just another trap? I backed away, feeling my knees tremble beneath me. The door seemed to sigh, the light beneath it flickering, then fading. The whispers returned, angry now, screaming my name, rattling the cold storage doors, slamming against the walls. I stumbled back to the lobby, clutching the notebook like a shield. The candle's flame shuddered, barely holding against the onslaught of darkness. And then I heard it, faint but clear, a voice from beyond the wall, a voice I recognized. Hello, can anyone hear me? It was muffled, distorted, but there was no mistaking it. It was Mr. Hargrove. I rushed to the wall, slamming my fists against the cold, cracked surface. Mr. Hargrove, please, I'm trapped. I can't get out. The voice paused, then continued, almost hesitant. You shouldn't be here. You weren't supposed to break the rules. I didn't break them. I followed them. I did everything right. I screamed, my voice cracking. A soft, bitter laugh echoed through the wall. The rules were never meant to protect you. They were meant to protect it from you. My mind reeled. What are you talking about? What is this place? Silence. And then a different voice answered. A voice twisted, distorted, 1,000 voices speaking as one. My reflection's voice. It is a doorway to despair, a place where the lost become the damned. And you were already part of it. The walls seemed to ripple, the cracks spreading, black ooze seeping from the seams. I stumbled back, horror clawing at my throat. The whispers grew louder, a deafening cacophony, drowning out all thought. And then I saw it. The cold storage doors bursting open, shadowy figures clawing their way out. Their hollow, twisted faces turned towards me. They shambled forward, their bodies warped, their eyes empty voids that seemed to swallow the light. The candle's flame flickered violently. I grabbed it, holding it high, the tiny light casting jagged shadows across the room. But it wasn't enough. The shadows pressed closer, reaching out with skeletal hands, their touch icy, burning, pulling at me. I stumbled back, feeling the cold seep into my bones, my vision blurring. But then, in that suffocating darkness, a faint light appeared, a sliver of brightness at the end of the hallway. The strange door I had seen before was open, warm light spilling out. With a desperate cry, I ran. The shadows surged around me, clawing, grasping, their whispered screams filling my ears. I burst through the door, slamming it shut behind me. Silence. I stood in a small, narrow room, lit by a flickering, buzzing fluorescent light. The walls were lined with old, dusty cabinets, and in the center of the room was a small, rotting desk. And behind the desk sat Mr. Hargrove. But he was different now. Older, his skin pale and stretched, his eyes sunken, his lips a thin, bloodless line. He looked up at me, a weary, defeated expression on his face. "You shouldn't have come here," he whispered, his voice hollow. "What is this place? What's happening to me?" I demanded, my voice trembling. "This is where it begins and where it ends. The morgue isn't just a building. It's a doorway, a trap. It consumes the lost, those who wander too far into its darkness." His voice wavered, filled with a deep, suffocating despair. "But the rules are meant to keep it contained. They are the bindings, the chains. But you've broken them, haven't you? You've seen it. You've spoken to it." He leaned forward, his empty eyes fixed on me. "And now it won't let you go." I felt my legs buckle beneath me. "Then, there's no way out." He smiled, a thin, cruel smile. "There is always a way out, but it comes at a price." The light above us flickered, the shadows creeping in along the edges of the room. Mr. Hargrove's form seemed to blur, twisting, his voice distorting. "Would you rather die, or take another's place?" The door behind me shuddered, the whispers clawing at the wood, the darkness seeping through the cracks. "What do you mean another's place?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. His smile widened, his voice a mocking whisper. "Someone must take your place to satisfy the hunger." I stared at him, the horrific realization sinking in. I could escape, but only if someone else was trapped in my stead. And I knew then, I wasn't the first. Mr. Hargrove's form twisted, dissolving into a dark, formless shadow, his mocking laughter echoing as the light went out. I stumbled back, pressing myself against the door. The darkness pressed in, the whispers now a screaming, deafening roar. And I realized I only had one choice. But could I bring myself to do it? The darkness closed in, a suffocating shroud that crushed the breath from my lungs. Mr. Hargrove's laughter echoed around me, a distorted chorus of mocking whispers. His twisted form dissolved into the shadows, leaving me alone in the dim, flickering light of the tiny room. But I wasn't alone, not truly. The shadows writhed just beyond the doorway, skeletal hands clawing at the wood, their twisted faces pressing against the cracks, their hollow eyes staring hungrily at me. The notebook felt like a lead weight in my trembling hands. The rules were a cruel joke, a twisted game meant to bind whatever horror lurked in the darkness. But the final, terrible truth was clear now. Someone had to take my place, or I would be devoured. Would you rather die, or take another's place? Mr. Hargrove's mocking words echoed in my mind. But how? How could I force someone else into this nightmare? Who could I even? A cold, sinking dread twisted in my gut. The answer was painfully clear. I needed to replace myself with another night guard. The shadows clawed at the door, the wood creaking under the strain. Panic clawed at my chest, but beneath the terror, a sickening resolve began to take root. I had to survive. I had to escape. But to do that, I needed someone else, someone who would be lured by the promise of easy money, just like I had been. But who would take such a job? Who could I trick into walking into this hell? My phone. I pulled it from my pocket, my hand shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. The screen was cracked, the battery almost dead, but there was still a signal. A lifeline. I opened my messages, my fingers trembling over the keyboard. I couldn't bring myself to message any of my friends. Not them. Not anyone I cared about. But there were others. People desperate for money, just like I had been. Faces I had seen in the dim bars, whispering about their debts, their struggles. I scrolled through my contacts, barely remembering how I had even met some of them. And then I saw his name, Jacob, an old acquaintance, someone I barely knew, but who I remembered as desperate, always complaining about his unpaid bills. My fingers moved as if possessed. Hey Jacob, got a job opportunity for you. Night shift, easy money. Interested? I hit send before I could second guess myself. The shadows outside the door hissed, their whispers a chaotic, hungry chorus. The door shuddered, cracking under their assault. Seconds passed. Then my phone buzzed. Yeah man, anything that pays. Where is it? A cold, sick feeling twisted in my stomach, but I forced myself to type. Old Morgue on Harlow Street. Show up at 8 p.m. tonight. Don't be late. The reply came almost instantly. Got it. Thanks, man. I owe you one. I dropped the phone, the shame washing over me, a suffocating, toxic weight. I was sending him to die, condemning him to a fate I could barely comprehend. But it was him or me, and I wasn't ready to die. The shadows outside the door seemed to sense the change. Their whispers became a frenzy, their twisted faces pressing against the door, their skeletal fingers clawing at the cracks. But then, just as quickly, they began to pull away, retreating, their wails fading into a distant, hungry echo. The pressure against the door eased, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, there was silence. The room grew lighter, the oppressive darkness peeling away. I staggered back, slumping against the rotting desk, gasping for air, and then the door was gone. In its place was the rusted, cracked door of the morgue's front entrance, the weak gray light of dawn spilling through the dusty glass. I didn't wait. I didn't dare hesitate. I rushed forward, throwing it open, stumbling out into the cold, rain-soaked street. The city was waking around me, the rain a soft drizzle that kissed my skin. I stood there, gasping, the cold air filling my lungs, and I wanted to scream, to sob, to laugh. I was free. I had escaped, but at what cost? I staggered home, locking the door behind me, my mind racing. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jacob's face, his text message. I owe you one. No, he didn't owe me. I owed him everything, and I had betrayed him. Night fell, and I sat in darkness, staring at my phone, watching the clock tick closer to 8 p.m. I told myself I wouldn't check, that I didn't want to know. But as the seconds slipped by, the guilt gnawed at me. 8 p.m. passed, then 8:15, then 8:30, and then my phone rang. Jacob's name flashed on the screen. My heart stopped. He had gone there. He was there now, trapped, suffering the same horrors I had barely survived. My thumb hovered over the answer button, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to hear his voice, to hear his screams. I turned off the phone, burying it under a pillow, trying to block out the phantom ringing that seemed to echo in my ears. The rain grew heavier outside, thunder rumbling in the distance. But inside, all I felt was a hollow, gnawing emptiness. For 3 days, I didn't leave my apartment. I ignored the pounding on the door, the messages piling up on my phone, the guilt twisted in my gut, a constant, burning sickness. And each night, I dreamed of the morgue, its dark, suffocating halls, the cold storage doors rattling, the whispers clawing at my mind. But on the fourth day, the dreams changed. I saw Jacob, his face pale, his eyes empty and black, his mouth twisted into a cruel, mocking smile. "You owe me," he whispered, his voice 1,000 layered echoes. I woke, gasping, drenched in sweat. The room was dark, the rain tapping against the window. But something was wrong. A cold wind swept through the room, the shadows twisting, pooling in the corner. And then I saw it. My reflection, standing in the darkness, its empty, soulless eyes staring at me. But it wasn't my reflection anymore. It was Jacob. He smiled, his twisted face pressing against the darkness, his voice a distorted echo. "You broke the rules, and now you're part of it." The light above me flickered, the shadows closing in, and I screamed, clawing at the door, tried to escape, but it wouldn't open. The window shattered, the cold wind roaring in, and the darkness surged forward. I was dragged back, suffocating in the twisting shadows, Jacob's face looming over me, his smile widening, splitting into a grotesque, hungry maw. "Your turn," he whispered, as the darkness swallowed me whole.